Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Yet another excellent episode. We're going to be speaking to a friend of the show, Jason Gregory, about his new book, The Science and Practice of Humility, The Path to Ultimate Freedom. But Just Energy Radio is brought to you by SoulHealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healing, and psychic reading. So if there's stuff going on in your life, you need some guidance and advice, give me a call, drop me an email, and we can set up a time for a private consultation. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading our free 50-page guide. That's appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. Don't forget, you can check out all of our archives on the Just Energy Radio website. You can check us out on YouTube. That's Just Energy Radio on YouTube, or here on the Inception Radio Network. So let me tell you a little bit about Jason and get him on the air, because we have tons to talk about. Now, Jason's been on the show before, and you can access those shows in the archives. But we're going to be talking about, again, his new book, The Science and Practice of Humility. Jason Gregory is a teacher and international speaker specializing in the fields of Eastern and Western philosophy, comparative religion, metaphysics, and ancient cultures. For years, he studied with masters in Buddhism, Gnosticism, Hermeticism, Hinduism, and Taoism, traveling to some of the most remote places in the world. The filmmaker of the documentary The Sound of Creation, he divides his time between Asia and Australia. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio from jasongregory.org, Jason Gregory. Hey, Jason, how are you?
I'm great, Rita. And thanks for the intro. It's good to be back on.
Well, where are you these days? I know that you're moving from somewhere that has internet to somewhere where not so much.
Well, yeah, I'm moving from actually Thailand, where I've been living for 10 months, to back to South India, where I was a few years ago, to a small place called Tiruvannamalai, which I'm sure they have, some sort of stable internet, but the problem is they have a lot of electricity problems there. So you can go some days with about 5 hours electricity, or if you're lucky, you can get 10 hours, So I thought it's better to speak to you before I get to somewhere like there.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to take down a note. Don't go there, no electricity.
Actually, you'll find plenty of places like that, I think, around in the countryside in India. So, yeah.
Okay, bigger mental note. Don't really go to India unless it's not super hot and you need air conditioning.
Exactly.
So in the general sense, what led you to decide to write your new book, The Science and Practice of Humility?
Well, it's just something that really formulated over time, like probably around the last time that we spoke, around 2011 or 12, I think it was. And I was traveling at the time, and it's kind of a topic that sort of came off the back of the documentary I made, where I speak about how humility is a science that usually only, we perceive this only in a master's or sage's consciousness. We don't really see it in the general sense with people, because most people usually tend to think of humility as a form of weakness or humiliation. So I sort of wanted to tackle it from that perspective, because I believe that, from being around masters and students of a lot of spiritual wisdoms for a long time, and even from my own practice and just from my own observations, that humility itself is you could say, the fruit of life, or you could say it's the fruit of somebody who's really assimilated what they've sort of learned in life in general, not just through spirituality or philosophy or psychology or any other thing like that, but just from general living, that someone who assimilates that usually has a very receptive, humble state of consciousness, and they usually emanate this sort of glow and this power that's, it's beyond the convention of words, you could say.
So it is different from something like charisma, where you have people that are very charismatic. It's a different kind of energy that is being put out by these people.
Well, you could say that it's a mixture of it can be mixed with charisma, obviously, but we need to be mindful that sometimes charismatic people can also be, what can you say, arrogant or vindictive, or have these certain traits. But other people you could say a humble kind, do sort of emanate a sense of charisma as well. There's no doubt about it. You can actually sense this. Like I'll use, say, the great mythologist Joseph Campbell for an example. Like, people might think that he was just a great scholar, but when you listen to him speak, when you when you see his charisma, there's a sense of that untouchable humility that can only come to sort of an individual who's really assimilated and imbibed a lot of the things that they've learned in their life, not just through what their passion is or what their interests are, but just from life in general, and opening themselves up to the greater whole. So there's like a sort of a sense of losing your own sort of sense of isolation and sort of expanding your consciousness to other people in sort of a relational value. So I would say that you're right there, Rita, but also, there is a lot of other people who are charismatic sometimes do use that for their own sort of selfish needs as well.
And it's sounding like this is not something we are necessarily born with, but something that I'm going to say, gather through life experience. Would that be a correct statement?
I think that is a correct statement. It's kind of a paradox, because in our deepest nature, we have this. But the thing is, because the way we're brought into life, and the way that our educational structures, our social and cultural, religious, are imposed upon us, we sort of lose touch with this nature that is deep within us. And so usually why, with what you said is true, because as we go through our life, we're sort of unraveling our own psyche, you could say. We're tapering, an old occult analogy is there's a light bulb and there's a lot of sheets of cloth over the top. And as we go through life, we're peeling more of those sheets away, and the light begins to emanate more. It's kind of that process, I believe, through life with what you said, is that, we are sort of acquiring this trait, but it's kind of a paradox. And if to use Buddhism as a reference, is, we don't know that we're Buddha nature, but we've always been Buddha nature. And the paradox is we seek to find that when we are already that, but you can't understand that unless you take the journey. So, it's difficult to language for people who are not very, I guess, inept with spiritual philosophy. But it's something that if you sort of take that first step, then you'll understand that as you start to unravel your own conditioning, your own latent tendencies and habitual ways, you'll see that there is this latent humility already within us, but it's something that we do acquire over time. Yes.
Well, and it sounds like there's a requirement in this whole process to change and grow and let go and allow ourselves to unfold as part of this whole process.
Yeah, definitely. There's an impulse for that. It's, if anyone is observant in life in general, they will see that, we don't really control life at all. Like life happens to us, and we are a part of that. It's, you can struggle against it, or you can begin to flow with it. There's you have two options really. So if you accept how life is with you and you begin to flow with it, then you'll actually see that you come into line with life, and you begin to mature spiritually. You begin to grow, and we have this sort of this paradox, because we are already that, but at the same time we're maturing all the time, and we're growing. Our, you could say, Rita, the personality is growing in the background of her eternal essence. It's, you are already part of, you're an innate part of the cosmos, but Rita herself is realizing that as she's going through life more and more. It's a divine game. You can't really have all the chess pieces until you live a bit of life and you are thrust upon the journey.
I'm getting bigger. Ooh, and, no. And it also sounds like, because I'm just kind of trying to help people maybe put a little box around what we're talking about, but it also sounds like it's not something that you can go out and strive to do, like learning to ride a bike or learning how to write programming code for a computer kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, like the great Zen master, he said, Lin Chi said, once you seek the Buddha, you lose the Buddha. So, I know that's kind of it's a difficult sort of phrase to understand, but like what you're saying, it's not something that you can go out and try and achieve, or set out to do. If you want to set out to acquire a master's degree, you've got to set aside a few years to do this, obviously more than a few years, but you've got to set aside a lot of time to focus on that certain thing. But when you're talking about specifically about something like the science of humility, or even if you wanted to talk about enlightenment, you've got to sort of get beyond the realm of our convention of time. So we always think of things in a linear process, but for those who are unfamiliar with a lot of spiritual philosophy, when you get into spiritual philosophy, everything's sort of non-linear. It's very paradoxical. It's very, it's mysterious by nature, because, when we think about the underlying fabric of reality, we can't really define and give that a name, even though we use words like God or Tao or Brahman, and we use these words, but these are only really pointing to that. They're not really that experience. It's kind of, it is a non-linear perspective when we get into that. So when you talk about something like the science of humility, you really got to step out of the conventions of time, and stepping out of that, we got to acquire this state. And it's not, you can't really acquire it like you can acquire a cheap suit. It has to be it has to be something that naturally just spontaneously comes to you, because it's in that spontaneity, it's in that really, it's in that now moment where time and thinking completely cuts out, because we invest so much energy into past and future, but we forget about what's happening right now in this very moment.
But it also, I would think, is something that is very internal versus external. And I'm going to use myself as an example. My goal growing up was to be psychic. And I read so many books thinking that one day I would read something that would make me be enlightened. That was my goal, to be enlightened so I could be psychic. And it wasn't until I discovered that I needed to turn inside to access that information that everything changed. And it sounds like this is a similar process. It's not about reading a book or doing a course or, whatever.
Well,
go ahead.
No, it's not. It's exactly what you're saying, Rita. It's even with myself earlier on, there was, I was like you, like I had all of these, I guess, illusions of enlightenment and this and that, and doing one practice after another, visiting one retreat, talking to another guru, speaking to another master, and it just never ends. It's kind of, people get sort of stuck in this sort of, I guess you could call it like a spiritual vacation mode, where they just go from one retreat to the other, and they think they're always postponing their enlightenment. You could say they're always putting it off. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, and then it's not until you sort of let go of those ideas that it's sort of you have an aha moment, like what you probably did when you were seeking to be more psychic. It probably came more to you when you began to let go of the notion of that, because we've been brought up in a culture and a society where we're naturally supposed to seek and strive, and when we get into the inner realm, away from the external realm, it's like you can't really seek and strive to attain anything in the inner realm, because it's how it is. There is no sort of it's not a tangible reality, you can say, and when someone sort of reorientates their focus to the inner realm, then you sort of get out of those habits of seeking and striving after a certain amount of time, and then you completely let go, as did Gautama the Buddha. That was the whole process. That's the whole parable of his story, where he underwent 7 years of practice with Hindu saints, or Hindu yogis, and he was an ascetic for that long, and then it wasn't until after those 7 years he was completely done, and he accepted a milky soup from a young farm girl who was herding cattle, and he sat under the Bodhi tree, and he just let go, and he ate the milky soup, and then he finally realized, like, everything he was striving for, he already had, but at the same time, it's he had to go on that journey. It's like in the Tao Te Ching, they say the journey of 10,000 miles begins with one step. So you kind of, this can be, some people can interpret it like, I shouldn't do anything to get this, and it's like, well, that's not so true. You need to have some sort of effort. If you want to become enlightened, you have to have a certain latent desire that you want that. You can't just sort of sit back and eat a cheeseburger and turn on the football and believe you're enlightened. It doesn't sort of work that way, but but this is kind of, again, this is the non-linear sort of paradox of nature, where you're double bound. You take one step, but you might take another step, 2 steps backwards, but you're still progressing, and you're still sort of unraveling your own conditioning.
Why do you think in today's society there is so much praise for our investment into the external world, and when we talk about things that are going on inside of us, they're not so highly valued?
Yeah, it's our whole society and culture invests so much money on the external world, and we both know this, that there's nothing invested on the inner realm. You can look at education, you can look at all of the systems we have as adults. There's nothing that sort of promotes the well-being of an individual, promotes them understanding their own psyche and their own consciousness. It's something that society and culture, they keep their distance from. And I think that our whole system here, our whole system in the external world is built on acquisition, it's built on materialism, it's built on all of this, and we've basically been bamboozled to believe that all of the success, all the peace and the happiness that we're going to get in life is going to be experienced out here. But the thing is, when you realize that everything that you experience it comes from the inner realm, then that really changes your whole focus. Your happiness and your success, your compassion and your forgiveness is really dependent upon you, not upon a external agency, which is really, this is kind of fundamental, that in the world these days, that we depend on an external agency to give us happiness, to give us peace. And this is why materialism is rife in the world. This is why religion have an anthropomorphic version of God, and it goes on and on and on. But when we sort of understand deep down that all of the peace, all of the contentment, all of the harmony in life that we seek, or that we actually have, is experienced through us. It's not experienced at us, you could say. But that, on top of that, there's a lot of other factors too, Rita, that go into that. But I'd say that our focus is too in the external world. It's not coming from the inner realm. There's no focus on consciousness at all in the world these days.
Scary as that may be. You mentioned materialism and how our world is turning so materialistic. And the part that's interesting to me is that there are so many people that have the belief that that is where their happiness is going to come from. And those same people end up being miserable.
Well, it's true. It's true. We look at the richest people in the world. Look at celebrities, look at bankers, look at, corporate owners and this and that. If happiness is judged by wealth, then they should be the happiest people in the world, but they never are. They're usually seeking more, and it just never ends. Like, greed has consumed a lot of these people. And I don't know what it takes for just the average individual to understand that. But from their perspective, they're still acting it out on a smaller degree. And, something fundamentally has to change in the society. But I think that, people like yourself, both of us here, and the listeners, we're sort of changing a lot of things. We're moving in a different direction to a new beat of the drum, and we're sort of understanding that everything that we seeked in life, maybe in our earlier life, where we seek material acquisition, where we seek status and fame and this and that, they were all sort of temporary phenomena that were not going to ultimately give us contentment. So, I think that there's a lot of people at the moment collectively moving in that direction, away from that perspective.
Well, and it just makes me think of someone like Robin Williams, great comedian, famous, successful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But apparently his inner world was awful and full of strife, to the point that he ended up taking his own life.
Well, it's a tragedy in itself, isn't it? Like, one of the greatest comedians that we've probably ever seen, and he himself, he lives in a world where he couldn't express his feelings. Like, it's a damn travesty, because that's the world that we live in at the moment. People get to a stage in their life where they can't open up to other people. They can't express themselves. They can't tell others, that psychologically they're struggling in life, because we've built a world where it's based on vultures, where if you show a sign of weakness, then people think that your carcass will be eaten. And in a sense, that's how a lot of people operate in this world. But that's the case that happened with Robin Williams. He couldn't open himself up. As humorous as he may have been in his movies and in his comedy, he was struggling inside, and he couldn't open himself up, and it is a shame. And I think that we have to realize that there's an immense sense of humility in showing that you are weak at certain times. That, look, Rita, I do need help. Opening up, saying, like, because we always think of strength in the physical sense, but strength really comes from within. But how can we help someone to gain more strength within if they're afraid to express themselves?
And express the pain, or express the, I can't think of the word, the sorrow and the shame. That's the word, the shame.
The shame, yeah. When, we do this a lot in psychology. They call it just basic shaming, like, because a lot of a psychological tendency that we've developed in our society and culture is shaming others, where we look for any opportunity to shame someone, and that's in truth that's one of the biggest signs of weakness, because why would anyone want to shame someone else? So this is something that's really developed in us over time because of what we were talking about earlier, the external orientation towards reality, and believing that we are, in a sense, separate from our brothers and sisters, when everything else, everything in life is connected. But the thing is, we don't see the world that way, so we shame others. We don't have any respect for other people, and we don't really show basic respect and love for other people. We live in a world where love is something that's divorced from our society. People sort of cringe when they see two people embracing each other in a act of love. People cringe in this world when they see that, but they will turn on the TV. They love to turn on the TV and watch two guys beat the crap out of each other. They love stuff like that. Well, they don't really love stuff like that. That's kind of like their own sort of social pepped up aggression going into something else. But that's the world we live in at the moment. But I feel it's changing.
Well, in working on evolving ourselves, is the concept of embracing love all that there is, or is there more to it? Do we need to do more than just love everybody, and love everything to evolve and grow and develop?
Well, first and foremost, you have to love yourself, because I think once you love yourself, then you have the ability then to love everyone else. In the end, the first relationship that you have is with yourself. And most people really, they take this one for granted. And this is one of the key concepts of having a world based just only in the external world, because we don't have a relationship with ourselves. We're terrified of facing our own psychological demons, but we can project them onto other people freely, at will. So I'd say that first and foremost, we need to love ourselves, and then if that can somehow, to be honest, you don't have to actively try and pretend to love to other people. It should naturally come to you. I think a lot of people in the world, they tend to pretend that they're peaceful and harmonious and loving to other people, when in the end they still have their own sort of personal agenda. And I think that to get to that stage that you're talking about, where we can authentically love ourselves and everybody else in the world over, then we need to work on ourselves fundamentally, like on a psychological, on the physical level, mental and spiritual. We need to work on ourselves, on our consciousness, and then we need to also refine those aspects in our consciousness that sort of bind us to our own personal agenda. Because I know this is sort of a topic that comes up a lot in my book, and a lot of people I've spoke to who have read it previously always say that this is going to challenge a lot of this aspect of having our own personal agenda. Will always challenge someone, because it's hard to step into a reality where you don't sort of have an agenda, and that's true and false in one sense. You know what I mean? Like you can live in a world where you are agendaless, but you're still doing things in life, but you don't really have the attachment and the desire to what you're doing that you did previous. This is kind of what they call in Sanskrit nishkarma karma, which means the concept of you're doing things selflessly. You're doing things because this is what's needed at that moment. And there's a sense of you obviously enjoying it, but if I was to throw it in the bin for you, then you wouldn't be overly attached to it, and you wouldn't obviously inflict violence and stuff like this. So I think that getting to the stage of this is kind of relinquishing your own personal agenda, maybe the next stage to hopefully living not only in individual peace but collective peace. But that can be a long way off for now. But the thing is that it's something that collectively and individually none of us have done. No, not a lot of us have done. Like the sages, you could say, have stepped into that realm of relinquishing their individual agendas for the world and whatnot. And that's an aspect of why they were much larger than they are.
Okay. Got a couple of different areas to go into. So, one of the things that you talked about early on that I want to come back to, because I think it is such an important topic. You brought up the concept of, in order to love other people, you have to love yourself. And I think so many people don't really understand what that looks like, what that feels like. And I'm wondering if you can shed some light on how we experience self-love.
It's a really difficult topic to cover.
Anything,
Yeah, and it's interesting because like a lot of masters over in India would say they use a word called Satchitananda, and Satchitananda means, Sat means ultimate existence, or the ultimate reality. Chit means consciousness or intelligence, and Ananda means bliss. And basically, this is kind of a premise for self-love because if you have an awareness of that ultimate reality, you call it what you will, in your own consciousness, then you sort of have a sense of that you are part of something much larger than just your personality. But the problem is, from that perspective, is there's not much of with a lot of people, it says there's not much ananda, not much bliss. So this is one of the key ingredients of self-love, is to have this sort of connection to bliss. I use this as an analogy because it's the best way to try and describe it. Because when you are, and to use Joseph Campbell's words, following your own bliss, it means that you're following just what's natural to you, and usually this is applied to art. For yourself, reader, you love researching, you love doing radio shows. These are aspects of your bliss. You don't have to sort of study how to do this. You just sort of naturally come about to do it. Obviously there is a little bit of research and this and that, but it came to you naturally. This is you could say, an act of self-love. It's moving in a direction that's not based on money, fame, fortune. It's just something that feels right to you. And this feeling right attitude is sort of something that's rubbed out in our educational systems, where we're taught just to think intellectually, where if you tell them to follow their feeling, a lot of people will tend to look into particular art forms. Like I grew up in Australia, and Australia is predominantly, most kids like sport, and sport in itself is an art form, and a lot of kids want to play sport, but then the educational system rubs that out of them. They say, well, there's not much money in that. You can't do that forever. It's only 10 years. So they sort of, the intellect rubs that out of them. And then in a sense that that's not going to complete them as a natural person. And, it's only becoming that natural individual that you'll sort of have that sense of self-love, because you will have, through following your bliss, you'll have a connection to, the Sat Chit more solidly. But if you're following just the particular pathways of society and culture, which are usually through the educational system and the search for large amounts of money, then you're never really going to have a strong sort of connection to self-love, because you're always moving, in a sense, against yourself and also against the universe. And this is why they always say that, most people, when they embark on a spiritual process within, that they realize that their whole life they were in their own way. No one else was in their way, but only they were in their own way. And, this is true because, we set up all of these things in our mind to block ourselves from experiencing that self-love, experiencing that bliss and that connection to the universe in its totality. And so I'd say, just to use that one word, Satchitananda, as a way of following, or a way of sort of discovering your own self-love.
Wow, I must really love myself, because I only do what I want to do. But I just go with the flow, and is that part of it? Is it listening to that inner guidance, that inner barometer that says, well, maybe I should work on this, or, or I'll wake up, my new thing is I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with an article in my head. And it's like, really? You can't wait till like 8, 3. And so I'll like go down, and I'll just start writing, and I just feel like that's the information coming through me, and I just accept that. But I mean, is that kind of what you're talking about, is just going where your inner radar is pointing you?
Definitely. Yeah, it is. It is. There's, it's, see, intellectually, you when you think about waking up at 3, even for myself, when I think about you waking up at 3 in the morning to write an article, I'd say, Rita's kind of insane, but that's that impulse working through. That's that feeling that, you can't give a sort of tangible name. And so it's this whole feeling aspect of the world that we're sort of shut down because, we live in an intellectual world, and, economics runs the world. So, when you just think about the feeling realm of the world, they would say, Rita, you're crazy. Don't get up at 3 in the morning. You've got to get up at 7, and you've got the stocks to handle, and this and that. All of these things that are really frivolous in the end. But it's like what you say, it's following that inner barometer, that inner, they call it, people call it divine guidance. In China, they call it the Tao, following the way. And see, the way really means it's pathless. It's a path. Your life, in a sense, is being pulled. And when you open yourself up to this pull of life, then you go in the direction that you needed to go. Not only for your own physical well-being, but also to unravel your own psychology, unravel your own conditioning. But only when you start to follow that pull. And most people ignore this call because, like I said, we live in an intellectual world. We rationalize our way out of these situations. I've met many people who have worked in the stock exchange, and they've had dreams of becoming a painter, and they've started painting, and they want to follow this path, but they can't. They rationalize themselves out of the situation. They think, well, that's not going to pay the bills, And I think that it's insane. I remember the British philosopher Alan Watts always said, what if money was no object? If you take that out of the equation, what would you do? And most people would say something of the artistic realm. They would want to be painters, or want to be songwriters, or writers, or anything like this. And then he'd tell them to go and follow that path. And they would say, well, it's not going to pay the bills. And, in the end, if you're sincere enough at that path, most likely you'll accrue a fee for that. You know what I mean? Like, it just depends on how sincere you are. A lot of people rationalize themselves out of the situation, and all I say to them is like, if you're not, how sincere are you about making money? And most people are very sincere about making money, and I usually say, divert that to, how would you like to live your life? How would you like to express yourself? What's that nature that's within you? And actually in Chinese, this is called Li, which is each individual has an organic pattern within their own mind. It's an organic pattern like the fiber of muscle or the markings of jade, is how the Chinese interpret it. And, that pattern has to come into the world, but the only thing is how you unlock that pattern. And the way is to follow that pull of life, to follow that pull or the flow or the Tao in Chinese, and to follow that in life, and then that's where you could say the appreciation of yourself will come, because you'll be following things that actually have fruit and benefit other people rather than just benefit yourself. It's easy to acquire money and buy a car, but it's not easy to paint an authentic painting that has meaning. We have to do a lot of soul searching to get that, but that painting will be worth much more than the car. You can throw the car in the bin and no one will care.
You keep using the words rationalization. We rationalize why we can't be the painter or the novelist or whatever. But is it really rationalization, or is it fear?
That's a good one, Rita. I think, well, it is fear, And I think the fear drives the rational perspective in that sense. It's we have, as humans, because of how we've been brought up, this immense fear of the unknown. And I think that because of we're brought up so dependent upon not only our family, but also the society we live in, the country we're part of, and in some cases, a religion we're part of. We're so dependent upon these external agencies that when you say to someone, why don't you just follow what you like without concern? This is what some would say is the spiritual wilderness, because you're sort of going out into the unknown, following what you like, but it's very uncertain, and this is like the hero's journey, with what Joseph Campbell used to talk about is, first you depart, and then you go on to the spiritual journey, and then you return as the hero, so to speak. But you have to go through that journey process. It's actually called the left-hand path in esotericism, because the left-hand path is it's very risky. It challenges you. You're going into a realm that is not certain, is not secure. But if you can continue and you can have your own individual courage, then you'll come through as the hero, so to speak. Which the hero actually is just someone who has an immense bliss, self-love for themselves, and realization of the universe, which helps everyone else. It's like a bodhisattva, you could say, in Buddhism. Whereas opposed to that is the right-hand path, and the right-hand path of esotericism is basically the path of conformity. It's the path of, paying the bills, getting a job you don't like, but a job that pays you well, and, blah, blah, blah. We all know this. We've all done it before. And the left-hand path is basically a path of nonconformity, which is, basically the way of spirituality.
I would like your opinion on this. If everyone on the planet started living this path, what do you think the world would be like? Would there be anybody to do our dry cleaning or pick up the garbage? Or there's more mundane things that I look at and go, there's no way I'd do that job?
That's a great question, because, we can't even imagine, because we're not even close to that at the moment. Maybe in the process of everyone waking up to that certain state, there would be hopefully other systems, and that would take care of those situations. But I remember I asked a similar question once in India, and I asked it to one of the students, and they just basically said that, think about it this way. Like what you just said, Rita, when you look at so to speak, a mundane job that you couldn't even imagine yourself doing, or I couldn't imagine myself doing, but there's someone out there that actually likes doing that. As remarkable as that might sound, there's someone who might like doing that. But then when we get into the realm, I guess, of what you were saying, like, say, garbage collector. I don't want to offend any garbage collectors out there, but I'm pretty sure most people, they don't really want to toil with other people's garbage. But, I might be short-sighted here. Maybe there are. But, to come back full circle to what you were saying, what it would look like and how we would get there, it's really a mystery, because we're not even close at the moment. We in the last, I suppose 50 years, we've only really started, a lot of people have only really started looking within themselves, as opposed to, say, when we had the first two world wars, we were completely external. So, yeah, it's a tough one, that question that you asked.
So you think people are looking more internal, or, if I was really going to kind of go down that road, I think there maybe is kind of a divide of, there's this group that is maybe looking more internal, and then there's this group that is becoming apparently more materialistic day by day.
There is I think there's a polarity, definitely, and you're right in what you say. It's, I've been just in Bangkok for the last few days, and it's a terribly materialistic place. Like, the shopping centers are bigger than Dubai itself, you know what I mean? Like, they're just crazy sizes. And it's people, that's their center of focus. But then if you look on the other end of the spectrum, people are starting to take the steps like yourself, into looking into the internal world and understanding themselves more, because they know that this is the true fruit of life. This is where it begins. It doesn't begin with having a Gucci pair of glasses or something like that, so to speak. But I would say that what I see in the world at the moment, there is definitely a large amount of people who are moving more towards the material realm, but at the same time, at probably a slower speed, there are more people who are sort of entering the spiritual realm. But it's really hard to say, because some people walk among both realms. But I see what you're saying, and it is true that there is a tendency for people to sort of be walking more into that artificial realm of materialism, which is, it's putting us in grave danger. I sense collectively, and it's really sad for those individuals, because they can't see that their life is built on just buying things, stuff that doesn't mean anything.
You obviously have spent time in India and China and other areas of the East where Westerners, us United States people, kind of make this assumption that, they're all sitting around meditating and connecting with God. I mean, what is it like there? Have those countries become as materialistic as we see in the States?
If not more. It's a funny thing in Asia, especially Far Eastern Asia. If you go to, say, Korea, China, Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, these places, when you get to sort of the Eastern Asia side, it's very materialistic. There's a focus on, well, actually, their focus is mainly just on materialism. It's, they've really lost touch with a lot of their ancient cultures, and it's not really people sitting around meditating, I can tell you. But there are obviously the authentic links are there. Like if you go to Korea, you can go and meet, you can go to a great monastery, meet some great masters of Buddhism or Taoism or any path like this. And, it's authentic, it's real, it's true, it's got that essence in it that maybe the Americans, Australians, and Europeans probably dream and vision of, but it's very small. It's few and far between. And, I guess out of all the countries over in Asia, two countries probably stick out the most, which is probably India and Nepal, because ingrained in their culture is actually their religion. So, you can't think of, for instance, in India, you can't think of sort of government without thinking about Hinduism. It's very different to, say, in America, because, America, probably the predominant religion is Christianity, but Christianity isn't part of, isn't interwoven in government, and they don't have to sort of consult religion. And I'm not saying that this is a good thing in it by any stretch, but I'm saying that when you go to India, there's more of a sense of, India and Nepal, there's more of a sense of maybe that there's a sort of a spiritual essence there that, for example, Hinduism and Christianity are probably poles apart in comparison to how they think about the world and the universe, God, etc., like that. So when you go to somewhere like India, there is a lot more. Well, there's 1 billion people, for example, but there is a lot of people in smaller communities who are more focused on enlightenment, spiritual attainment, and just daily practice and just being humble in general. But there's not really a massive feel of Asia in general that there is. It is some sort of spiritual paradise, but it's not really that case.
So we're getting close to break, but I wanted to ask this question, which is kind of related, but really not. About the concept of gurus. But what do you think of people that call themselves a guru? Do you feel that they are in a state of enlightenment, or do you think that they are really kind of ego-based?
Well, I think if you're calling yourself a guru or a master or something like that, I think that you lose it in essence. You don't really you're not a guru, basically. You're not a master. I think that would be, I think, a pretty general interpretation of them all. Even from the ones who, even from over here, if someone does call themselves a guru, even though there are plenty, trust me, there's plenty who proclaim that they're enlightened and this and that. But when you look into the ancient traditions and you look into the texts and when you understand more about this, you sort of understand that, when you start to proclaim that you're a guru or you're enlightened, you lose it in that essence. You're not really that. You're just language in it. And this is, why in the first lines of the Tao Te Ching, they say, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. So you lose it once you begin to language it, because language itself is an operation of duality. If you were a guru, you would have a relationship with what we call non-duality. So why would you don't have to say what an apple is. If you are, you don't have to explain what an apple is. Why would you have to explain that you are a guru? This is just ridiculous. Like, a lot of people do this, especially Western masters. A lot of, especially in America, Australia, and Europe, a lot of, I wouldn't say even masters, a lot of spiritual teachers, when they start to proclaim that they're enlightened and this and that, I think that that's a dead giveaway that they're not, and they've probably got something to sell you.
Well, I always find it interesting because it seems to me, and I'm not going to say all of them, but a percentage of them end up having this like cult following, which to me is really kind of scary. It's like, well, they have this cult, so I don't even want to participate.
Well, it is very eerie, Rita. It's, I've come, especially in India. You see this in India a lot because in Indian tradition, there is obviously a guru and disciple relationship. Now, what a lot of people don't understand, especially in Western countries, is that this is kind of a trait isolated to India. When you start to see it outside of India, when you start to see, Western teachers and that acquiring disciples and this and so forth and so on, it's almost doesn't, it's not a part of our archetype, you could say, our psychological archetype. It's, in India, I've met many teachers who are from Europe who follow the path of, you could say, Indian path of spirituality, which is basically Vedanta or Hinduism, and they acquire followers. And it's very hard to talk to the guru through. You have to speak through the students, and if this is how it operates, this will sound very strange. If the students don't feel where you're coming from, or so forth and so on, then they will tell the guru, you shouldn't meet this guy. So basically, what the guru sets himself up for is sort of a false net of security where nobody questions their authority. So it's very, like you said, it's cultish, it's very authoritarian, and actually there's a lot of, this is why there's a clinical psychologist called John Wellwood, and he came up with the term spiritual bypassing, because spiritual bypassing is basically bypassing our psychological traits and everything to try and attain this non-dual perspective, and just suppressing all of these psychological tendencies, our shadow tendencies, and throwing them all in the garbage, where we have this, where we pretend that we're part of this non-dual awareness, because this is what most gurus promote to their disciples is, don't worry about any of those shadow tendencies and this and that. Just listen to what I'm saying, and listen and just try and reside in non-dual awareness. And the thing is that after time, most people leave the guru, or most people come into conflict with the guru, because this is not sort of a natural path of spirituality. You have to deal also with the personality. Eventually, you have to deal with your personality eventually. You can't just put it in the toilet and think it's going to flush itself. You have to deal with it yourself. And this is very narrow-mindedness from teachers and gurus in general, because I know this from experience, that they like to just acquire followers. It keeps the bank account rolling. It keeps their own philosophy of life intact, and they have a sort of sense of they have a monarchical sense of the world. And this comes into all aspects. It comes into religion. When you think about the monarchical view of reality, this has sort of come about from religions such as Christianity, where people believe that God is a creator of sorts. God is he made this world, and this is a lot in India as well, and places like that promote gurus. And that's why it's accepted that the guru is the authority, because apparently God is an authority. But when you get into other what I say is more mature paths of spirituality, like Taoism or Zen Buddhism, you get into the realm that the underlying fabric of reality, call it God if you will, is not personal, it's impersonal. It's flowing through all life, but it's not judging reader, it's not judging myself, it's keeping balance in all aspects of life. And this is why...
All right. I think I'm going to cut you off right there, unless you have like one little teeny piece of sense, because we really need to go to break.
Okay, well, I was just going to say that this is why the Tao Te Ching says, the Tao loves and nourishes all, but does not lord it over them. And that's sort of the key there.
Excellent. So, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're here talking to Jason Gregory about his book, The Science and Practice of Humility. His webpage is jasongregory.org, and we'll be back with Jason after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
Are you looking for a cure for boredom? Never worry. IRN's new interactive website introduces a number of ways to pass time while you listen to your favorite show. Choose anything from the IRN chat lounge, the game lounge, video lounge, or the mood lounge. These fun, exciting features let you chat in real time with fellow listeners, view live skywatches, play daily posted online games, or pick a show based on topic. The choices are endless. Use your time wisely, keeping it all on IRN.
Who were the gods of antiquity? They've been described as the forces of nature, levels of consciousness, and aspects of our psyche. Stories that depict their incredible weapons, their flying machines, and their amazing adventures are characterized as being the product of our ancestors' fanciful imaginations. But what if the tales of the gods are true? Did the writers, chroniclers, and scribes of our distant past actually document a realistic view of our origin? My latest book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, looks at our most ancient legends. Learn of the torrid romances, elaborate plots, violent scandals, and conspiracies that played out in antiquity. Find out the role the gods played in the life and culture we have today. If you want to find out the truth of who we are and where we come from, order your copy of Man-Made today. For more information, go to www.manmadethechronicles.com. That's www.manmadethechronicles.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.
Move past the crossroads in your life and discover alternative solutions to your deepest concerns at soulhealer.com. So whether it's a physical problem, an emotional issue, a question about work, or troubles in your relationships, naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise can help you. Bring peace, harmony, and health back into your life. Schedule a session today. Visit soulhealer.com right away and live the life you've been dreaming of.
You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
We only have a couple of seconds before we have to get back to the show, and I want to tell you how you can jumpstart your intuition today. Using my free 50-page introductory guide filled with simple, revolutionary, and proven techniques, you can ignite your intuition and tap into your inner wisdom, all from the comfort of your own home. The Institute of Applied Energetics is the leader in online home study instruction for those interested in becoming a certified medical intuitive, intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. Now is the time to transform your life and take it to a completely new level. Discover who you are and how you work. Open the door to the world of intuition, health, and healing. You can jumpstart your intuition right away by going to www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and downloading our free guide. Get the opportunity of a lifetime and live the life you deserve. Download your free Jumpstart Your Intuition guide today at www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and begin living a life filled with passion and purpose.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Go deep inside yourself and venture into the realm of the unconscious mind with my Meditating on the Kabbalah guided imagery audio CDs. Discover who you are and what you want in life. Meditating on the Kabbalah can help you to open, clear, and revitalize the energetic pathways of your subtle being. They will support you in your spiritual quest by helping you to access the profound insights and inner guidance you need as you work in alignment with your highest good. Let them help you to release negative thoughts and emotions and clear away any limitations that may be keeping you from experiencing your full potential. Walk down the path to health, healing, understanding, and enlightenment with Meditating on the Kabbalah. Order your copy today at www.soulhealer.com. That's right, that's www.soulhealer.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network. Would you like your favorite show to be played again live on air? Well, now the choice is in your hands with IRN's live request portal, an easy way to request your favorite show with a simple click. IRN's live request portal now gives you exclusive access to all the shows. How easy is it? Simply type a show name or a guest name, click request, even write a dedication message, and that's it. Try it now. Simply visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com, click on the live request tab under the show menu. Now playing your favorite show is just a mouse click away.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. We've been here talking to Jason Gregory about his new book, The Science and Practice of Humility. His webpage is jasongregory.org. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com and the Institute of Applied Energetics, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading our free 50-page guide. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. enlightened.com. And something I forgot to mention, if you have been interested in my new movie, Icon, Deconstructing the Archetypes of Our Ancients, you can get your copy on a digital download on Amazon.com. That's Icon, Deconstructing the Archetypes of the Ancients. Jason, based on Hindu sources, I'm going to go somewhere completely different. So based on Hindu sources, we are currently in the Kali Yuga, and our ability to connect with ourselves and the underlying energies of life, to me, seem impaired. Do you think that this is true, or according to the text, that is part of the Kali Yuga? So do you think that this is true? And at the same time, if we are in this energetic cycle of the planet, that we still can connect with that energy?
Oh, definitely. I think that it doesn't really matter which yuga we're in. There's always going to be particular individuals who can connect with the source, you could say, and that's kind of been evidenced throughout time. I would say what we're seeing now is there's kind of you could say an evolution of people who are connecting. You could say it's very small, obviously, but it's more so if you and I were to travel to 1900. I'm pretty sure we were in a very unenlightened place at that time, and now we're in a place where we can sort of make a choice about our future. We can either sit around and destroy the world, or we can evolve individually and collectively. And there's two trains of thought here, because when we look at there's two calendars in the Hindu pantheon. Whereas you have the long count calendar, which is based on one kalpa, which is basically a day and night of Brahma, they say, which is basically the length of time that we've basically been on the age of the Earth, you could say, which is about 8.4. No, how old is it? 8.64 billion years or something like this. But this is a long count of the Yuga cycle system, and according to that, we're in Kali Yuga. But then there's another calendar which has been around for quite some time as well, and it kind of was brought to light in the 1800s from a guru called Swami Sri Yukteswar, and this basically takes the focus away from more of the collective and puts it back into the individual's hands. And this is a shorter calendar. It's based on a 24,000 year cycle, which is in a sense very similar to, you could say, the Mayan calendar, which ended a few years ago. But it's very similar in its traits. And what that calendar actually says is it says that we're already into Dwapara Yuga, and Dwapara Yuga is the Yuga just out of Kali Yuga. And Dwapara Yuga, the essence of Dwapara Yuga is the age of energy. It's the age when we realize that all matter is condensed energy. How we think, our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings are in themselves energy that affect the field of intelligence. And as we progress in Dwapara Yuga, there's going to be much more knowledge understood, and the understanding of energy will progress further and further until Treta Yuga, which is the next age. But that's kind of a different perspective, because I like to look at that one, because the thing is, when you look at the shorter calendar, and you can tie this with history, you can look at all of the events that have happened in history, and you can tie it with the particular trait of that yuga. And it's usually based on what in Sanskrit it's called dharma. Dharma means virtue, that virtue that comes through the individual. What we were talking about before, kind of like that bliss, in a sense. But dharma is more of the more connection you have with the universe, the source, the more dharma the more virtue begins to move through you. it's kind of the connection between the individual and divine will, you could say. And that's sort of the way I like to look at it, because when we look at, most people sort of think, Kali Yuga, doom and gloom at the moment, but when you really look at it, you think that, well, it's not so much doom and gloom if you compare it to, say, 100 years ago or 200 years ago. We're still killing each other, we're still doing really stupid things to each other, but we're sort of trying to work it out, and I think we are working it out slowly. And this is why I think it's more related to the smaller Yuga cycle, because I think that we're in an age of energy where we're sort of understanding how energy works. This is why technology has come about, because we're understanding more about energy, so we're understanding more about technology, but we're also understanding more about making weapons of energy to kill each other as well. All of this, it's like a great energetic soup, but this is the way I like to look at it. So I just like the listeners to keep in mind that there's actually two Yuga systems, and one's a really large long count, which is really hard to map. It's that long, it's that old, it traces billions of years, when the other one only traces 24,000 years. So,
but all the listeners know that it's all just energy. Anyway,
yeah, that's right.
But I want to ask a question about the shorter calendar. Because I personally, for my own research, like the longer calendar for a number of reasons that I'm not even going to go into. And have only really seen one reference, which was that one guru who brought it forward, and it kind of goes around with the 26,000 year cycle. But I never was able to find any other references to that cycle of time other than that one gentleman's work. So my question is, and I don't know if you know the answer, is it really a calendar that exists in India, or was this something that this guy channeled and people have just taken it on as being real and true?
That's a good question. Actually, the thought in India is kind of split. There are parts of India who follow that calendar still, but it's very small in comparison to the long count, obviously. And those parts of India not that I know of, are connected to Yukteswar, but there is. I guess that there can be a sense of skepticism there, I guess, with it looking like it's only isolated to him. But I've seen it over there, and I've seen places and people where it's not connected to him, but they, who knows? Because it's been over 100 years, there may be some connection there. But maybe he did channel it. Who knows? But I don't know. Like, what I personally like about that calendar is there's a lot of references to historical events and the way civilization was at particular times in history. But I'm kind of I don't favor that one totally over the long count. Obviously, the long count's extremely interesting. It's just so hard to map, but there's a lot of things that align with both of them, I guess. But yeah, you've got to, like what you said, you've got to keep in mind that like with a lot of things, if that was particular just to him, then there can be some sense of skepticism towards that, for sure.
Well, and I would even be okay of having a cycle in a cycle, like we find in the Mayan work, where there's this big calendar, and then within that, and I think that is in the Indian tradition, where there's a cycle, because there's the Maha Yuga, and then there's this one, and it breaks down and makes you crazy because there's just too many of them.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's true. It's I think that we got to be mindful as well that even a lot of these, even the long count calendar may have come from the mind of a guru as well. Way back when. So maybe this was maybe a smaller hatchling of the long count, and it may be within it, because that's sort of how it is similar to how it worked with the Mayans. So maybe it is. It's just, I guess, that with the short count calendar, there's not much information out there on there. There's not much study on there apart from, a few Western scholars, I guess, like Walter Cruttenden and other people like that who have studied that work. So, I look at it purely from a virtuous point of view where, we're coming into a time of energy, and, it's there. And if you look at Dharma, just as the mental virtue, which it actually, in Sanskrit, that's what it means. So, Yuktaswar is not wrong in that sense. And so when you look at that, then there is something happening, beyond obviously what you and I can think of, but a lot of people are moving in that direction, understanding energy and understanding themselves as more than just a personality, and taking it in a larger scope.
If we all knew everything all at one time, it always makes me wonder, when we transcend this lifetime and we go back to wherever we go back to,
Yep.
How much clarity we're going to have, and how much vision on how this all operates we will actually have, because it will be awesome. And then if you could just bring it back into, your next life, it would be even better.
Well, that's it. It's kind of like, almost like humans themselves, like we just can't fathom it by our own intellect. I watched a film recently, actually, called Automata, and it was about it was about basically transhumanism and all this stuff that a lot of people are familiar with. But basically, what I found interesting out of the movie is when the robot was evolving, it said to the human, "I know why rain happens." And then the human Antonio Banderas asked, why? And they said, "You wouldn't understand." It's that complex. It's beyond kind of, our intellectual understanding. And, and I think from our perspective is that where we get everything wrong is we're trying to understand reality. And, if you look at a lot of the wisdom traditions, especially if you look at Zen, when you look at Zen Buddhism, they use something called koans, which are basically riddles, which really stop you in your tracks. And they stop you in your tracks in your mind. They get you out of thinking. They get you out of your discursive intellect, basically. And, that's like, there's one koan, which is a monk asks an old Zen master called Tungshan, what is the Buddha? Meaning, what is the Buddha nature? And Tungshan said 3 pounds of flax. Now, to you and I, that makes no sense at all. And, a lot of people have dissected this koan. They've sort of looked into it. Maybe he was weighing flax at the time, and this and that. And that's all nonsense. The idea of it is to get the monk out of intellectual understanding, out of intellectual interpretation of trying to understand this, what this all is happening right now. What's going on? What is this universe? Like what we were just talking about. What am I? And we can't get to it with the intellect. It's so far beneath that you have to get out of the thinking mind. You have to get out of trying to rationalize what's going on here. And that's the key of that koan, is to get you. It's the perfect irrational response to an intellectual question that you cannot answer, because the point of life is that life's a mystery. And it's until we realize that life's a mystery, that's when we'll progress, because then we will soon admit that we don't know anything in reality. We really don't know nothing compared to what we were just talking about. Like understanding everything, the all is kind of beyond our but beyond human comprehension.
So it sounds like the goal is to make the student go, huh? and kind of stop them in their tracks. But that might be fun. Well,
yeah.
It's like, well, here's this. My answer is like 3. Actually, the answer to everything is 3. I don't know why, but it's always 3. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But
well, basically, it's to make the student go, huh? Like, because they see when you're thinking too much, when you're only intellectualizing reality, you're not in nature. You're not natural. You're away from how the actual universe expresses itself, which is spontaneous. And so, and this sort of ties into another koan, which I'll just quickly say. One master said, it's an old story in Japan. One master said to the disciple, I want an exhibition of Zen tomorrow from you. And basically meaning, I want an exhibition of, spontaneity or, to be in the moment. And then, the student kind of walked away and was, instantly worried, like, how am I going to show this, And then on the way to see the master the next day, he was really concerned and worried. And then he saw a particular frog, which is native to Japan, and he scooped it up, and he thought, well, I'll just show this, and he gave it to the master. Said, where's your exhibition of Zen? And then he showed the frog, and then the master just laughed and just shook his head and said, it's too intellectual, meaning it's too contrived, too thought of, too planned, and that's sort of that's our mentality in the world. We're planning too much, we're thinking too much, when in reality is spontaneous, and and we are an aspect of nature, and we don't recognize it because, like what you said before, we're stuck into the external world, we're stuck into materialism. We lost our whole connection with feeling, the feeling realm of nature.
Well, one of the concepts that comes out of, and I'm going to guess Hinduism, is the whole idea of that life is an illusion. What do they mean by that?
Well, it can mean so many things, can't it?
I know, 3, right? It's 3. No, 3 pounds of flax.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, 3. You're right. I think you're right. 3. That can be an answer for everything. But this is a funny thing because you would know this too, Rita, that so many things are open for interpretation. So many things, and things can be misinterpreted, like what we see with religion, and things can be interpreted the way that we see it. But what we need to realize, and what people would realize if they were more observant in their life, is, say for example, if you read a book today, you'll get a certain amount out of it. If you read it 2 years from now, you'll get even more out of it. What's changed? Nothing's changed with the book. You've changed. And so this is the whole thing. Like, with all of this, especially when we talk about, in Hinduism, they speak about everything as illusion. It's so open for interpretation, where people, especially in New Age circles, they get really wound up in this, and it's all love and light, don't worry about it, peace and harmony, it's all an illusion. And really, they are just parroting what they've heard, but don't really understand the root of what they're saying. And if we want to get into Hindu thought, we have to understand Sanskrit first and foremost. And then the whole concept of illusion comes from the Sanskrit word Maya. And so Maya is the illusion of reality, but the root of Maya is Martyr. So if you were to spell it in English, you'd spell it M-A-T-R. And this is sort of the root of a lot of Greco-Latin words, such as meter, matrix, all these sort of words. And so what are these words connoting? They're connoting measurement. And so Martyr actually is a tool of measurement. So Maya, or the illusion, is how we measure reality, how we define reality. That's sort of the key element of what the Hindus are talking about when they say illusion. There is some evidence, you could say, that when you look at a lot of Vedic texts, they do mention the atom, and they mention the fabric of reality, obviously. And Maya can be used in that context as well, that, in relation to, say, something like quantum physics, where they say, solid matter itself isn't really tangible. It's kind of an illusion that we interpret with our mind. That's sort of very similar to Hindu thought, but the original aspect of Maya in Hindu thought is measurement. So basically, how you measure reality, because when you look out into the world, we just see the world, and it's only until we start to name things and label things that things become separate and dual. They become divided, and when you stop naming and when you stop labeling, then you start to see that actually reality is relational, it's connected, and it's all happening at once. It's, the universe itself is one organism that is growing, and we're an aspect of that. We are sort of the fruit of the planet, the fruit of the universe, you could say, human sentient life form. So that's kind of the precise definition of what they're talking about in Hinduism when they say the illusion of reality. They're talking about measurement. They're not really talking about the fabric of reality, but they are in a sense. But at the same time, the illusion is built in our mind when we begin to measure what's happening around us.
And see, I always thought, or not always, a more recent thought was that there was this whole concept of life as an illusion because it was really tied to the whole notion of reincarnation, and that our time here on the planet is finite, and what we come here to do is what we come here to do, or heal or whatever, but that we go back to some much bigger, grander thing, and so we shouldn't worry about it. Like this moment. Like, don't worry about this moment. Three.
Well, that's perfect. Well, look, you are right, really. You know what I mean? Like, if we look at, say, if we take on concepts like reincarnation and so forth and so on, then we are, impermanent in a sense, and so the illusion comes when we start to act as if we're permanent, and as we see in the world, people act as if that this ride is going to last forever, when it's not. We have a use by date, and we don't know when that is. It's different for each and every one of us. So that in itself is an illusion, and you could say that's really tied to a lot of Buddhism as well, that impermanence and that concept that in the end you shouldn't worry about a lot, because is life really serious? And when you think about it, life isn't serious. It's how we make it serious. That's why we have wars and this and that, because we take life too serious. And if you look at it from the Buddhist point of view, if you understand impermanence, then you understand that you don't have to take life too serious. And when you begin to not take life too serious, suffering decreases. You begin to enjoy life more, because you have a respect that eventually you're going to die, but that's not such a big deal, because death and rebirth are connected, and birth and death are connected. It's a big grand cycle, So yeah, again, like a lot of people do misinterpret the concept of illusion, and they use different mirrors, whether it be Buddhism or Hinduism or even science.
So I'm going to shift gears here for a minute, because one of the things that you talk about in your book is this concept of mental alchemy. What is that?
It's a Hermetic and Gnostic idea, and basically, if we look at alchemy, most people would probably understand, well, especially your listeners would understand, that alchemy is kind of turning lead into gold. And when you talk about it in the mental sphere, they talk about turning the lead of the ego into gold, meaning the gold of enlightenment, or whatever you want to, whatever word you want to associate with that. So basically, when we break down alchemy, the actual word comes from alchemia, which is meaning is a derivative word of Allah, you could say, in Arabic, and chemia, I believe, is in Greek, which means to join, so meaning to join with God. So it's very similar to yuk or yoga, and religare in Latin, which is the origins of religion, the word religion. So mental alchemy is basically the union of the personal will and the divine will. And this comes back to what I was talking about before with the word dharma, or te in Chinese, which is virtue. It's that virtue that begins to work through you, which is beyond sort of intellectual, what can you say, intellectual trying to work it out, trying to understand virtue from the intellect. You can't really get to it. This virtue is very different. It's just something that begins to happen through you. And this is sort of connected to when you begin to refine your consciousness in the process of mental alchemy, you begin to merge with this divine will. And when you merge with this divine will, you realize that in the end, there was no real personal will. There was just the universe doing itself through you. And then the Hermetics and the Gnostics believe that when you actually get to that stage, then you have the ability to sort of transform matter. You could say this is like, mind over matter, that perspective that I guess a lot of scientists, especially within the quantum realm, are only starting to talk about now. But, the Hermetics and the Gnostics were talking about this, pre-Christ, maybe, who knows how long ago, but it was a while ago. And, this is turning, when we look at consciousness in three parts, where we have the physical, mental, and spiritual, which is how most wisdom traditions look at it, is that when we look at the physical realm itself is a canvas in a sense. It's kind of like, it's just a covering of something underneath. And beneath that is the mental realm. And the mental realm is the realm of energy, the realm of the universe animating itself. This is where we get the words of chi in Chinese or prana in Sanskrit, whereas this primal energy is moving through us, which we can't explain. You can open and close your hand, but you can't really explain how you can open and close your hand. You can just do it. It's just there. And then beyond that is obviously the spiritual realm, which is sort of the ground of our being, which is a very transparent, reflective sort of state of consciousness where you could say pure awareness, where you can just observe reality and see it as it is. But where mental alchemy is key in this is when you begin to have a relationship more with the mental realm, and it begins to sort of connect with the spiritual realm, then that's sort of where the mental alchemy the process begins to take place, where the divine will begins to work through you, and then you can focus your attention on whatever say for instance your bliss. You focus your attention all on your bliss, and then if you continue to do that, the more that the physical reality will begin to, in a sense, conspire with what's going on within you. This is what Carl Jung was talking about when he was talking about the unconscious. He spoke about how the physical reality and the unconscious somehow conspire with each other against your own ego, but you don't know anything about it. You don't know how it works. It's just the way it is. And this is sort of what the Hermetics believed with mental alchemy. They believed that when you have come into contact with that virtue inside yourself, that it somehow begins to conspire with the physical realm, and then there is, you are being led in life in a very synchronistic way. And most people who have sort of embarked on any inner journey will understand that synchronicities do happen in life, and in their life that were probably unnoticed beforehand. They actually happen in everyone's life. But the thing is, there's a lot more deeper going on than just something of coincidence. You're almost being, like what we were talking about earlier before, was you're being led in life by something much larger than ourselves. So that's sort of a brief overview of mental alchemy, but that's kind of the alchemists would always focus on the inner world to try and, you could say, in a sense, trying to manipulate their reality. But the grander view of it is not to manipulate your reality, it's to come in alignment with your reality. A lot of people, I guess, of secret societies and so forth and so on, who are focused on Gnosticism and Hermeticism, kind of look at it as, in a sense of trying to manipulate one's reality, which is kind of the old Hermetics would probably say that's the incorrect way of approaching it.
And with what you're saying, it has kind of the feel of concepts that surround the law of attraction with, some little tweaks to it, where law of attraction is about, putting out what you want and allowing the universe to bring it to you, where with you're saying it's more the universe is going to give you what you're supposed to have or whatever by just opening up to it. So do you think that there is a relationship between the two, or that they're separate?
I think that there's a relationship, but at the same time they're very distant, because if we are to look at, say, a lot of the literature out there on law of attraction, specifically The Secret's focused on basically egotistical gain. We all know that we've either watched the documentary or read the book, and it talks about acquiring money, being successful in society, so forth and so on. And these are all things that are of value to the ego. Whereas the alchemist would be, that's none of their concern at all. What their concern is in the very word alchemia, and to fuse with God, to join with God. And so making money or becoming a politician or whatever is just frivolous compared to that. So, like I said, that there is certain relationships there, because you are, in the other perspective, when you look at, from the Secret's point of view, when they say, focus on what you want, this and that, it's all from the ego. When you look at mental alchemy, it's like, get your ego out of the way and the universe will give you what you want, regardless of what you think you want. So basically, once you move your individual will out of the way, then things will come to you that are supposed to come to you, and in a sense that you are sort of thinking about it as well, because you have connected with a higher source, a higher power, you could say.
I like using the word surrender. Like I was doing this interview and they asked me, so what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? And I was like, I don't know. They haven't told me. So I can't really give you an answer, because it's not like I can plan out what I'm going to be doing 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Because it's not really about me.
Well, it's true. It's true. And, 5 years from now, where are they living? You know what I mean? Like, if you're living in reality, you're living right now. 5 years away is too far away to even think. But it's, again, like what we were saying, it's half the time what we want for ourselves is not what we need, and we need to realize this. Most people don't realize this, and it's only until you go on that journey into the spiritual wilderness that you realize that half of the stuff you thought you needed in life, you didn't need, and that's why it never came to you, because you didn't need it. And when you go on the inner realm, all the things that come to you are very unexpected, very spontaneous, and this is sort of how mental alchemy is. It's just that moving with nature, but also attracting things to yourself that reflect where you are in your life as well.
I hate that you didn't need it part, personally. Like, I could go for $1 million, the fancy new car I don't care about. Now, I do have my little mansion, so I'm good there. Maybe I need a yacht next or something. I don't know. But,
well, it's true. Like, I was, many years ago, I thought the same too, Rita. It was like, when you get involved in, I guess, a lot of these sort of spiritual concepts, you sort of think, well, why can't this sort of happen as well, and this and that? And, you sort of realize that, $1 million may sound all right, but it may not benefit your inner world the best.
I know, but rats. You know, it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
mean, I mean, I can follow the flow and be in the pattern, but I can bitch about it at the same time. It's like, okay, but if I have to,
yeah.
anyway, I don't think it takes me out of the flow just to like whine about
No.
it.
I think it's good because at least you're not lying down and acting dead like a lot of people would. You're still progressing, so it's great.
But you were talking about the ego and kind of how the secret was really out there and had a little bit too much ego to it.
Yeah.
But does the ego offer any function or have any role in our development of consciousness and humility?
Oh, definitely. We'll look at you and I now. Like we're having a conversation, a good conversation, and the thing is, our ego is still interactive now. We still have our own character playing out, maybe on a more subtle level, but it still has a relational aspect, I think, which is great. You know what I mean? Like I don't sort of ascribe to a lot of other spiritual traditions who say that we can destroy the ego, because I think that's kind of a bit of nonsense in the sense that if you destroy the ego totally, you probably wouldn't even be within the body. You'd be somewhere else. And actually, in a lot of wisdom traditions, they don't really say destroy the ego. Like if we look into Taoism, we always see the symbology of Lao-tzu riding the ox, and basically that means he's controlled his mind, he's tamed his mind. It doesn't mean that he's thrown his mind into the bin, because he would be in a stupor, obviously, if he threw it in the bin. So, obviously, the ego has a function in the relational, social, and cultural aspects of the world, which actually, gives the world a certain flavor. It gives that aspect of, variety is the spice of life to the world. If we lived in a completely egoless society, then, there wouldn't be much to talk about, I guess. So it definitely has a place. It's just that the place that we put it at the moment is that at the top of the pedestal without people even being conscious of it. So, in Zen they actually say, that the funny thing about the ego, it doesn't exist, but we continue to believe it exists. So it's only when you understand that it doesn't exist in reality, because it's temporary, that you can begin to actually sort of bring the true ego forward, from a very pure place.
But it seems like it's the ego that creates all of our attachments to the things in the world. And if we didn't have that, where my mind goes is that we would end up living in a shanty somewhere, and that the things that we strive for, there wouldn't be the motivation to go to college. There wouldn't be the motivation to better ourselves in other ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, like what I sort of hinted at before. In a spiritual process, it's funny because if you're undergoing sort of a spiritual process or a practice of cultivation, what you realize is that you don't really, the ego doesn't disappear. What happens is that you sort of have a more of a connection with that which is beyond, time and space. But at the same time, the ego is sort of wound up in the evolutionary sort of aspect of the universe, where if you sort of find that aspect that's beyond time and space, your ego begins to kind of evolve with how the universe is evolving, and sort of it marinates in its own in your own mystical juice, you could say. So it becomes very refined and very, you could say, charismatic in a sense from that place, because it's sort of lost friction with the ego. Sort of lost the friction with the things that attach and bind it to what drives it, which is usually fear.
We're starting a little close on time, and so let's go here for a little bit. So if someone wanted to experience humility in their lives, or more humility, or at least start down that path, what would be a good place for them to open that door?
Just be receptive to what's going on around you. Stop. I would say to people, if they want to experience more of humility and see its natural power, is to sort of stop trying to control their own life. You know, we all, eventually, in the end, most people, when they're on their deathbed, they realize that they didn't control anything in life, and it's only then that they acknowledge that. And we can acknowledge that right now. We can acknowledge that if we be more open and receptive to life, we not meaning completely passive. Have a bit of discernment, but if you open yourself more and more and accept others and accept that people are different, and then that maybe my perspective of life is not the be all and end all, then you'll start to experience this power of humility that comes through an individual. It's much like water. Like, I use water as an analogy because water is the lowest lying force of nature, and it's transparent and it's reflective, and yet it has the power to take over nature. It has that power. And then the thing about water is it's in everything, and it's the same with humility. The problem with people is people do anything to ignore the lowest places in life. And if you can somehow accept that from that low place that there is a power, then you'll start to experience it. We don't have to go out and shake society and shake other people and tell them how to think and how to be. We can just accept them for how they are, and we can accept ourselves, and we can begin to move in alignment with how the world is. And I think the accepting ourselves is the more difficult part, because it's easy to tell someone how to think and how to be, but it's much harder for someone to live what they're thinking and telling people how to do what to do. So I'd say just be receptive, and a good practice is to wake up one day and just allow life to happen to you all day, and don't pass judgment on it, and don't defend yourself at all. Just go through that whole day and see what happens. Reflect upon it at the end of the day, and see how it was for you. And most times when I tell people to do this, they get to the end of the day and they say, I don't feel blocked up. I don't feel angry at people. It just has this effect if you can open yourself up to it.
Okay, so I'm not quite clicking on what that means. Let life happen, like not try to do anything. I'm kind of missing it.
Well, just do what you do. Like, you wake up as Rita today. You do your radio show, and you do whatever you do. You still just do your daily thing, your chores and this and that. But when you encounter people, say if you encounter someone who's testing you, just accept the experience. Don't try to defend yourself. Don't project your own ideas onto this person. Just let them say what they have to say to you. Accept it. You don't want to look like a fool. I mean, in the sense that, you don't want to sit there and say nothing, but just accept it, and then, go on with your day, and just move through your day like that. Accept every situation, be receptive to it, and then just reflect upon it at the end of the day. Now, that the situations will vary. Can vary. What will probably happen is, this is what usually happens too, is you'll be instantly probably tested, because you are sort of putting that energy out there. You're saying, I'm going to just let life happen to me while I'm doing my life. And then, you might encounter a very prickly situation, but deal with it in the way that I'm saying. If someone can, then they'll see that there's actually a way through life if you can live like that. It doesn't mean that you have to be opinionless. It doesn't mean any of this. It just means that you are reducing your agendaful input into life. You're taking your agenda out of life, and you're doing it. If someone comes up to you and says, hey, you were an idiot in that situation. You can sort of, you don't have to defend yourself. You can sort of reflect and think, maybe I was a bit off on that day. Who knows? It's not the end of the world that they're calling me an idiot or not. So, it does take a personal act of courage on the individual if they really want to enter a realm of this, because the key trait of the ego is self-defense, psychological self-defense. And when we get down to it, what are we defending? And all we're defending is the ideas that we've implemented into our mind that bind us to the ego, and they're usually things, labels, usually groupthink labels, especially like countries and religions and race and sex and all of these sorts of things, which in reality they're phantoms. They're not real. They're just ideological structures that we've implemented, but we defend them. And there's so much more in the social and cultural sphere that our ego is bound by, and that's why we're always in perpetual self-defense. So, this is the key of martial arts, is to be in the grace of reality, where you're not defending yourself, but you're moving in a fluid motion that you aren't put off balance.
Yeah. What about paying attention to the synchronicities that happen in your life or during that day while you're allowing life to happen? Do you think there would be more, or there'd be more awareness to things like that?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Because you're being more attentive to life. You're taking your focus to your inner world. And, as soon as you take your focus to your inner world, a whole other realm opens up. Like synchronicities will pop up. There should be more of these because you're more attentive. We live in a society and world that is primarily distracted. Just go out and have a look at during the day. People are fixed to LCD monitors. They're either on their phone, on their laptop, watching TV, and they're never really completely present and attentive to what's going on around them. That's why that we don't listen to each other anymore. That's why that's an aspect of why we are in self-defense, because people are disturbing our own distracted state. And so I think that if you go out there and you really be more attentive, you'll definitely see more synchronicities. You'll definitely see more life itself becomes more vivid. This is what people find when they begin to practice meditation a lot more. Their mind begins to attune to a different beat of the drum. And when you begin to be conscious more of your breath, of your thoughts, of what's going on inside yourself, then what you see outside is much more vivid and much more, and you can see it much more clearly. And then once you have all of those sort of notions and labels and everything pushed aside, then reality will be as it is, as it truly is, rather than how we think it should be, which is a big problem in the world today, because we are coming into a world and trying to tell the world how it should be, rather than seeing it for how it truly is.
That's like a science fiction horror movie. And wouldn't you, if you're in this process, be more attuned to your own feelings, whether you could recognize what the word is, what the emotion word tied to it is, but what's going on inside of you in that moment? So if you end up in a situation where someone calls you stupid, it might give you the opportunity to actually feel what you're really feeling about that, versus just having a knee-jerk reaction to the experience, perhaps.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautifully stated, Rita. And that's a whole other realm which we have not gone into as collectively as a humanity, because we're not taught to feel our emotions. We're not taught to really explore why that's happening. We just have these knee-jerk reactions, and usually it's involved with profanity or projections onto the other person. And I think if you explore that feeling aspect, you understand more about pain then. And this is a whole part of reality which we're trying to ignore, that that pain itself is just the polar opposite of pleasure, and we're trying to seek only pleasure in this world. So, if someone interferes with our pleasurable experience, so to speak, then knee-jerk reactions will happen. But if you're willing to really feel your emotional state, really feel what's going on within you, then you'll start to acknowledge that pain is also there as well. And it's only when you start to embrace pain that you begin to embrace something else in life that's much, much bigger than pain, but it's within pain. You've got to really embrace pain to work through it. You can't just push pain into the cellar. You've really got to embrace it. Otherwise, your pleasurable experience will always suffer. And that's a big part of reality that we don't acknowledge.
Exactly. Well, on that note, Jason, I think we need to wrap up because I think the music is going to be coming up. So, thank you so much for coming on. This was wonderful. I feel more blissful just having spoken to you.
I feel more blissful to be on with you. Actually, it's been a great interview as usual, Rita, and it's really good to connect with you.
No, I always love having you on. I have great authors that come on, and some obviously better than or they're all great. They're all great. And but I don't know. I just love when there's just this really good connection through the whole thing, and it's all good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great. It's great. Yeah.
So you just need to keep writing books so that I can keep having you back on.
Yeah. Well, I've got a few others wrote, so they're ready to go. So hopefully, not too far away. Maybe.
Well, okay.
Maybe end of next year or something like that.
Perfect. That would be perfect timing.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. I'm assuming they can get your book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookstores, all the regular outlets?
All the regular outlets, and it should be in bookstores in November.
Perfect. All right, Jason, I'm going to let you go and talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you, Rita. Thanks for having us on.
All right. Thank you. That's Jason Gregory. His book is The Science and Practice of Humility. His website is jasongregory.org. And so until next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser to